Hello everyone, today we will be going over another instructive chess game, and this is one of my favorite games and probably one of the most famous games of all time. Played by Anderssen with the white pieces against his student Dufrense, it is nicknamed the Evergreen game for its timeless beauty. I think showing this game today will help improve your tactical and attacking understandings, as well as demonstrate why it is so important to castle early in the game. Let's get started. Anderssen starts out with e4, and Dufrense responds with e5. Both sides then play natural developing moves, seeking to move their minor pieces out and control the center. Now, in this position, Anderssen chooses to go for a pawn sacrifice, pawn to b4. And this is actually an opening line called the Evans Gambit. The idea of this pawn sacrifice is that white trades material for development, as after black takes, white is able to gain time by playing c3. Black is forced to move his bishop out of danger and cannot move any of his other pieces, and the effects of white's sacrifice can be seen with d4, as while black has spent 2 moves moving his bishop to b4 and a5, white has been able to set up a presence in the center with his pawn on c3 and his pawn on d4. Black captures a pawn, and white castles, continuing to offer material in exchange for rapid development, with the hope that his more active pieces can lead to an attack on the undeveloped black camp. Black declines, as if he chooses to be greedy and capture the pawn, he can find himself in danger really easily, with queen b3 threatening to take the f7 pawn with the bishop supported by the queen, and when black defends naturally with queen e7, he can again bring out a new piece, developing his knight to c3, and on the next move, white is threatening to just play knight d5, continuing to attack black and harass him. So black chooses to decline the pawn sacrifice, and white continues with queen b3 anyways, once again applying pressure on the f7 square and threatening to take the pawn on the next move. Black decides to defend with queen f6, and then white plays e5, attacking the queen, and black chooses to move it to queen g6. The reason why black chose not to take this pawn with his knight is because white's rook can move to e1, pinning the knight to the king. Once again, this is a pin, and black cannot move his knight out of danger, so he is forced to defend it with d6, but then white has a nice fork, moving his queen to b5, attacking the king and the bishop at the same time, and when black blocks the check, white just wins a piece for free. So, queen g6 is played. White continues developing his pieces naturally, and in this position, it is really best for black to simply castle his king. One of the most basic opening principles is to castle the king to bring it to a safer spot on the edge of the board, and it is never more evident in this position, as white has a lot of pressure on black. You can see clearly how white's 2 bishops and his rook are just prying towards black's king, and with this great amount of pressure, it is really best for black to try to bring his king to safety. However, instead of realizing these signs and choosing to bring his king to safety, black ignores this and sacrifices a pawn to seek activity and gain time. And in this position, white just continues to develop naturally with knight to d2. Once again, in this position, black has the option to castle and bring his king out of danger from white's prying bishops and rook, but he once again chooses to ignore this. Play bishop e7, and white just responds with knight e4, threatening to capture the pawn on the next move, as this knight blocks the queen from protecting the pawn. In this position, black now opts to move his queen to h5, moving it out of line from white's bishop on d3, and now white plays a fantastic attacking move here, sacrificing his knight with knight f6 check. Since this knight forks the black king and the queen, black is forced to capture it, and when white recaptures the pawn, he suddenly finds his rook opened up against black's king. Since white's e1 rook is pinning the e7 knight, and the e7 knight cannot move out of danger, black seeks activity elsewhere with rook g8, and the idea behind this rook g8 move is revealed after white plays rook to d1. Black captures the knight on f3, and the pawn on g2 cannot capture the queen as it is being pinned by the rook on g8 to the white king. However, white had brilliantly anticipated this and now plays the first move of one of the most brilliant sequences in all of chess, so just sit back and enjoy. First, white sacrifices rook with rook to e7, and now his queen when he captures the pawn on d7. Why, you may ask? All of it for this double check from the bishop and the rook. Black here only has two legal moves. He can only move his king to c6 or to e8. If he moves his king to c6, white can play bishop d7, and this actually checkmates black, as he has no squares where he can move his king out of danger. So his only move is to move it back to e8, but white can play bishop to d7 check anyways, and after black either moves it to f8 or to b8. On both squares, white can then move his bishop, capturing black's knight, checkmating black with his two bishops and his pawn on f6. Truly a beautiful final position. If black had chosen to ignore the original rook sacrifice and moved his king out of danger, it would not have saved him. For example, moving to f8 in this position allows white to play discover check from his bishop on e3. Black is forced to block the check, and then white can just win the queen on f3 for free. If he decides to move to the other square, to d8 in this position, white can once again sacrifice his rook on d7, and when black captures, he faces the same deadly double check from the bishop and the rook on d1. And soon, black will find himself checkmated in the same fashion as before. Checkmated by two bishops and a pawn, completely smothering his king. I think it's really amazing how these two bishops and a pawn managed to completely checkmate black, who's just up so much material in this position. This game is not only a beautiful display of tactics and attacking, but also a great lesson of the power of piece activity and why it is so important to castle your king to safety early in the game. After all, black could have avoided white's brilliant combination if he had just taken his chances earlier to castle in the game. And so, it's for this reason why you should always make sure to castle early in your games. That's all for today. Once again, thank you for watching and have a good day.